Hello, and let us begin in our preparation to create the creepiest brush holder possibly ever. I've started the base off with the remnants left over from a spaghetti sauce jar actually, alongside this air dry clay that seemed as if it hadn't been used in about 30 years approximately, when in reality it's maybe 2 weeks. I just wanted to be dramatic. But it gave me the chance to note that if you're dealing with clay that has been substantially dried out, the best bet to save it is to coat it with a decent amount of water, like a lot, and then knead it thoroughly. Some you may not be able to salvage, but it's worth a try. Once I worked with some, I simply flattened it out, smoothed it down on one side, and placed it on top of the jar. First I had the plan to only take about 3/4 of the jar, but I ended up moving it up to the entirety of the jar. How many times can I say jar in this? It's jarring. Continue on more and more. For the window, I just cut out using the back of tweezers, which is definitely the most professional way I could possibly have gone about this. Smoothing out the edges as I go with water. This is when I decided to add more than just 3/4 of it, building it both up and down. As I wanted this to look as if it was a hanging picture, I added a border around it, which later on I add texture to the border, but by rolling out a small piece of clay and flattening it, adding a slip to the back, which is essentially just water and more clay, and adding it on. I wanted to add a pin and string appearance to it, which meant rolling out another piece of clay and then a ball of clay. Again, how many times can I say jar? How many times can I say clay? It doesn't have the same effect if I say claying versus jarring. Next up, the face. I actually started with the ears first by simply rolling another small ball of clay, adding texture to the end of it to make it easier to attach, flattening it slightly and sticking a point into the center of it and folding it over on itself a bit. Placing it onto the jar, and having much debate about where the second one was going to go. And then, redoing it anyways. Yay for being indecisive, I think. For the eyes, I rolled out and semi-flattened a piece and placed it on where I wanted, you guessed it, the eyes to go. And again with my finger and some water to smooth them out more. Then started to look severely menacing, and the eyeballs. Unless you're going to go in more of a horror direction, I simply rolled out a ball and made the edges slightly oval. For my nose, not my nose, but the nose, I rolled out a piece, I flattened one end and then placed another small bit on one of the flattened sides to give it more of a thickness, placed it on, scored the edges once again, and smoothed it down. Made the decision to remove the bottom quarter of the nose. And then nostrils. I can't really explain what I did for the lips past that I, made a lip shape. I suppose thicker in the middle and tapered out a little bit, but not exactly. Adding more where I wanted them to be thicker, and then taking out the middle part to add teeth. Creepy, creepy little teeth. And a little bit more with the chin. Some chubby little cheeks, which I later blushed up. And finally, eyebrows, which let me just tell you, I used to not do my eyebrows. There was a good portion of my life, I would say 3/4 of it, where I did not do my eyebrows. And then I started doing them, and I worked really, really hard on getting better at doing them, and then I had them exactly how I wanted them. Lately, I haven't been doing them at all, and it's made it so much more difficult to translate my lack of skills with them lately with clay brows. But I tried, I really tried. I left this to dry overnight with a damp cloth over top of it to disable basically as much cracking from the clay as possible. The slower it hardens, the less cracking you'll end up getting if you are using an air dry clay, that is. For the skin tone, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily doing mine, as mine's more of a cool tone skin tone, but it is a lighter skin tone, because I'm going to be mixing in a pink acrylic paint with a color that's literally called Flesh, which is kind of creepy but also very, very accurate. I'm using this as my entire background color. Jesus. And slightly breaking it, but it's fine. I will be dealing with that at a later time. Following it up with some bright red lips in case I end up wanting to make this a makeup brush holder rather than, just like a crappy brush holder. Adding white into both the teeth and the eyes to start them off. brown to my brows. A baby blue as my eye color. To tie the back and the front together, I'm using that same red as the pushpin color. The same brown as I used for my brows for the wood border. Adding a little bit of black into the brown to add color to the string. As I said earlier, the pink that I used in the skin tone on the cheeks to blend it out to a blush tone. I first put it on, like the pink, and then blended it with a clean and dry brush, and then use some of what was left over for the skin tone to further blend it in and out. Repeat steps as necessary until you got the blush that you want. This is simultaneously the creepiest and one of the cooler clay creations that I made, I think. But to seal it all in and make it waterproof, have a little bit more stability to it. Because clearly it breaks off pretty easily, I'm coating it with some resin. If you're using oven baked clay, you shouldn't have to do this, but it always definitely helps out. I mixed up 2 bottles quickly, and then using 2 small cups, which I actually only ended up using 1, but it made a better shot to have 2 there. Pouring equal amounts of both into a cup. Mixing those together very thoroughly. Then brushing it on with a paintbrush that I really didn't care about. I just got this one from the dollar store, no big deal. It's also in this process that I used some more clay and filled in the area off camera that I had broken. When it dried down, I painted it again with the skin tone color, and then the resin sealed it all together and made it basically just look like all one piece. I wanted to go one step further, and since the resin has a long phase where it's very sticky, I utilized that as I attached some false eyelashes. But that is it. Again, this is a really, I would say, creepy little brush bottle, but I actually really like it. And the fact that you could take this concept and just fully customize it just makes it all the better. But that is it for today's video. I do hope you guys enjoy, and I will see you in my next one. Bye guys. Creepy little eyes.